Welcome to Inside Vietnam. I'm your host, and today's story is one that's going to stick with you. Meet Declan O'Brien. He's 67 years old, from Dublin, Ireland. Spent 32 years as a firefighter with Dublin Fire Brigade. The kind of man who ran into burning buildings for 3 decades, saved lives, came home every night to the woman he loved. When she died, he thought maybe Hanoi could give him a fresh start. Maybe he could find family again, find purpose, feel needed instead of pitied. What he found was welcome, warmth. A young woman named Lynn who invited him into her family's home, into Sunday dinners, into a life that felt like belonging. And, for a while, it was everything he'd been missing. But there was one word, just one word, that changed everything. That made him see 6 months of his life in a completely different light. That made him realize he'd been playing a role he never auditioned for. This one's going to make you think twice about what generosity really means, and what happens when loneliness makes you desperate to be useful again. Here's Declan's story, in his own words. I'll tell you exactly when I knew I had to leave Dublin. It wasn't the day Siobhan died, though Christ, that was brutal enough. Cancer took her in 4 months, start to finish. One day she's complaining about feeling tired. The next we're sitting in a consultant's office, being told there's nothing they can do except make her comfortable. 41 years of marriage, and I got 4 months' notice that it was ending. The funeral was massive. Half the Dublin Fire Brigade showed up in dress uniform. The lads from the station, fellas I'd worked with for 32 years, carrying her coffin. I appreciated it, I did. But standing there watching them lower her into the ground, all I could think was that I didn't know how to be just Declan. I'd been Declan the firefighter and Declan who's married to Siobhan since I was 26 years old. Now I was neither. The real breaking point came about 2 years after. I was still going to our local, this pub in Drumcondra we'd been drinking at since the 80s. The lads would be there, the usual crowd, and they'd see me walk in, and you could watch it happen, this little shift in their faces. Poor Declan. Declan, whose wife died. They'd never say her name. They'd talk around it, around her, like she was a landmine in the conversation. Talk about the football, talk about the station gossip. Ask how I was keeping in this careful, gentle way that made me want to put my head through the bar. I wasn't angry at them. They meant well. But their pity was suffocating me. I'd go home to the house in Drumcondra, the house we'd bought in 1987 when property was still affordable and Dublin was still ours. Every corner had Siobhan in it, her reading chair by the window, the kitchen where she'd make breakfast while I was coming off night shift, our bed, which I couldn't sleep in anymore. I'd been sleeping in the spare room for 2 years because lying in our bed without her felt like drowning. My entire identity had been built on 2 things, running into fires and coming home to her. I'd retired from the brigade at 63, got a decent pension, about €2,000 a month. Siobhan and I had plans to travel a bit, visit her sister in Cork more often, maybe get a little place in Kerry near where her family was from. Then she got sick, and all those plans turned to ash. So there I was at 67, retired, widowed. No kids we'd tried for years, but it never happened, and eventually we'd made peace with it. The job was our family, we'd say. The lads at the station, the community we'd built. But after I retired and she died, I realized I didn't have a family. I had people who felt sorry for me. The decision to leave came on a Tuesday night, 3 in the morning. I couldn't sleep, which was normal by then. I was on YouTube, just clicking through random videos to pass the time, and I landed on this thing about Hanoi coffee culture. Vietnamese egg coffee, these tiny little cafes, people sitting on plastic stools watching the world go by. It looked warm, busy, chaotic in a way that had nothing to do with grief. I started researching. Vietnam was cheap. I could live well on my pension. It was warm year-round, which appealed to me after 67 Irish winters. It was far away, properly far, the kind of distance where nobody would know me as poor Declan, whose wife died. I could just be some Irish fella drinking coffee. I spent 2 weeks reading everything I could. Expat forums, YouTube channels, visa requirements. I wasn't running toward something. I was running away from the ghost of Siobhan in every room of that house, from the pity in the lad's eyes, from being a man whose purpose had died with his wife. Siobhan's family had a cottage down in Kerry, left to her by her aunt. We'd spent summers there, planned to retire there eventually. I sold it. Got about €40,000. Combined with what we'd saved over the years, I had $95,000 in the bank. My pension would keep coming, $2,000 a month, direct deposit. I didn't need much. I didn't tell anyone I was booking a one-way ticket. I told the lads I was taking a holiday, needed some sun, would be back in a few months. They thought I was going to Spain or Portugal. I let them think that. If I told them Vietnam, they'd have questions, concerns, advice I didn't want to hear. I remember sitting in that empty house the night before my flight, looking around at 40 years of life with Siobhan. Photos on the walls, her books still on the shelves. The teapot she'd use every morning. I wasn't sad leaving it. I was relieved. The taxi came at 5 in the morning. I locked the door behind me and didn't look back. I had no plan beyond getting to Hanoi and not being in Dublin. No idea what I was looking for. No idea what I'd find. I certainly had no idea that 6 months later I'd be sitting in a cafe near Hohenkiem Lake, having my heart broken by a 28-year-old pharmacy worker who'd never seen me as anything but a wallet with legs. But I'm getting ahead of myself. First, I had to land. The flight from Dublin to Hanoi isn't direct. I had a layover in Dubai, another in Bangkok, 23 hours total, most of it spent staring out the window or pretending to watch films I wasn't actually seeing. When we finally started descending into Noi Bai Airport, I looked down at this sprawling green landscape, rice paddies stretching out like patchwork, and thought, right, here we go then. The heat hit me the second I stepped off the plane. Not the dry heat you'd get in Spain, but this thick, humid wall that made my shirt stick to my back immediately. February in Hanoi, and it was 28 degrees. I'd left Dublin in the freezing rain that morning. Already felt like a different planet. Immigration was straightforward enough. I had my visa sorted online, 60 days tourist. The officer barely looked at me, just stamped the passport and waved me through. Grabbed my bag from the carousel and walked out into the arrivals hall, which was absolute chaos. Taxi drivers shouting, people holding signs, families reuniting. I stood there like a spare part, 67 years old with one suitcase and no clue what came next. Got a taxi into the city. The driver spoke no English. I spoke no Vietnamese. But I showed him the address of the apartment I'd rented on Airbnb, and off we went. The drive into Hanoi was like nothing I'd ever experienced. Motorbikes everywhere, hundreds of them, flooding around the car like water. Families of 4 on a single bike, women in conical hats. Blocks carrying massive loads balanced on the back. No helmets, no fear, just weaving through traffic like it was choreographed. The apartment was in Tay Ho, the Westlake area. The landlord had told me it was popular with expats, quiet, good cafes. It was a studio on the 4th floor of a narrow building, no lift, which at 67 wasn't ideal, but I managed. The landlord, a Vietnamese woman about 50, showed me in, demonstrated how the shower worked, where the fuse box was, all in broken English. She left me her number and disappeared. I sat on the bed and looked around, clean enough. Small balcony overlooking the street, air conditioning unit that rattled when it ran, a kettle, a hot plate, a tiny fridge. Everything I needed and nothing I wanted. That first week was rough, I'll be honest. The jet lag had me awake at 3 in the morning, sleeping at random times during the day. I'd walk around Tay Ho in a daze, overwhelmed by the noise, the smells, the sheer foreignness of everything. The motorbikes never stopped. Even at night, you could hear them buzzing past like angry insects. I'd eat at random places, pointing at pictures on menus, half the time not knowing what I was ordering. Pho for breakfast, which took some getting used to. Banh mi from street carts. Everything was cheap, almost suspiciously cheap. A meal would cost me €2 or €3. But here's the thing, nobody knew me. Nobody looked at me with pity. I was just another Western tourist wandering around, one of thousands. That anonymity was intoxicating. I could walk down the street and not be poor Declan. I was nobody, and that felt like freedom. Week 2, I started finding a routine. I'm a creature of habit, always have been. 32 years of shift work at the fire brigade will do that to you. I'd wake up around 7, walk down to this little cafe near Hohenkiem Lake. Beautiful spot, the lake. Early morning, you'd see locals doing Tai Chi, old fellas playing checkers, the whole city waking up. The cafe was tiny, maybe 6 tables, run by this older couple who didn't speak a word of English but seemed to appreciate that I showed up every morning. I'd order café soda, iced coffee with condensed milk, strong as rocket fuel and sweet enough to stand a spoon in. I'd sit there with my coffee and watch Hanoi happen around me. Motorbikes, street vendors selling pho from shoulder poles, businessmen in suits dodging puddles, school kids in white AO dye uniforms. It was busy and alive, in a way Dublin hadn't felt to me in years. That's where I met Lynn. It was maybe 2 weeks in, a Wednesday morning. I was at my usual table, struggling with the Vietnamese menu, even though I ordered the same thing every day. when this young woman sat down at the table next to mine. She had a pharmacy uniform on, white coat with a name tag I couldn't read. She ordered in Vietnamese, quick and easy, then glanced over and saw me staring at the menu like it was written in hieroglyphics. She smiled. Not a pitying smile, just amused. "Can I help you?" she said in pretty good English. I laughed. "Ah, yeah," I said. "I've been coming here 2 weeks and I still can't figure out what half this stuff is." She leaned over and pointed at the menu. "This one is egg coffee," she said. "Very famous in Hanoi. You try?" "Sure," I said. "Why not?" She ordered for me, chatted with the owner in Vietnamese, and a few minutes later, I had this creamy, frothy coffee in front of me that tasted like dessert. Lynn watched me try it, clearly waiting for my reaction. "That's gorgeous," I said. "Like drinking a cloud." She laughed at that, a proper laugh, and introduced herself. "Lynn," she said, extending her hand. "I work at pharmacy near here." "Declan," I said, shaking it. "I'm from Dublin. Just here for a while." We talked for maybe 15 minutes that first morning. She asked about Ireland, what brought me to Vietnam, whether I liked Hanoi. I kept it vague, needed a change, wanted to see somewhere new. She told me she'd worked at the pharmacy for 5 years, studied English in university but didn't get to practice much. Her shift started at 9, so she'd stop here most mornings for coffee. "Nice to meet you, Declan," she said when she left. "Maybe I see you tomorrow?" "Maybe you will," I said. And she did. Next morning, there she was again. We fell into this easy pattern over the next week and a half. She'd arrive around 8, we'd chat for 20 minutes, she'd head off to work, nothing heavy. She taught me basic Vietnamese phrases: "Xin chào" for hello, "Cam on" for thank you, how to order coffee properly. I told her stories about Dublin, about the fire brigade, made her laugh with tales about lads I'd worked with. She never asked why I was really there, never pried into whether I had family waiting back home, never treated me like I was running from something. She was just genuinely pleasant company, and after 2 years of suffocating pity in Dublin, that was everything. Looking back now, I should have wondered why a 28-year-old pharmacy worker was so interested in befriending a 67-year-old Irish pensioner. But I wasn't thinking clearly. I was lonely, and she was kind, and kindness from a stranger feels different than kindness from people who know your tragedy. 3 weeks into these morning coffees, she asked if I had plans for Sunday. "Not really," I said. "Why?" "My family make big lunch every Sunday," she said. "My mother cook very good food. You want to come? Meet my family?" I hesitated. Meeting her family felt significant somehow, like crossing a line from casual acquaintance to something else. But then I thought about what else I'd be doing that Sunday. Sitting in my apartment, walking around the lake alone, maybe getting pho from a street cart, nobody waiting for me anywhere. "Yeah," I said. "That'd be lovely. Thank you." She wrote her address down on a napkin. "Sunday, 1 o'clock, she said, smiling. "You will like my family. They're very friendly." "I'm sure they are," I said. I spent the rest of that week weirdly nervous about it. Bought a bottle of wine to bring, though I wasn't sure if that was appropriate. Googled Vietnamese customs, how to behave at someone's house, whether shoes come off at the door. I told myself I was overthinking it, that it was just lunch with a friend's family, nothing more. But deep down, some part of me was desperate for it to mean something. Desperate to be welcomed somewhere, to feel like I belonged to something again, even if it was just borrowed belonging for an afternoon. I had no idea I was about to audition for a role I didn't know existed. Sunday came. I took a grab bike to the address Lynn had given me, clutching that bottle of wine like it was going to protect me from making a fool of myself. The house was in the old quarter, one of those narrow 3-story places squeezed between identical buildings, painted yellow with peeling paint, and a motorbike parked out front. I stood outside for a minute, gathering myself, then knocked. Lynn answered, smiling, ushered me in. Shoes off at the door, I got that bit right at least. The house was tight and vertical narrow stairs going up, rooms opening off a central corridor, everything clean but worn, smelled like cooking, something savory and sweet that made my stomach growl. Her mother came out from the kitchen, wiping her hands on an apron. Small woman, maybe 60, gray hair pulled back, wearing house clothes. She said something in Vietnamese, smiling at me, and Lynn translated. "My mother say welcome. Very happy you come." I handed over the wine, feeling awkward. "Thank you for having me," I said. "Your home is lovely. More Vietnamese, more smiling." Lynn's father appeared then, coming down the stairs. Taller than his wife, thin, weathered face, looked like a man who'd worked with his hands his whole life. He shook my hand firmly, nodded, said something that sounded friendly even though I didn't understand a word. My father say you are very welcome, Lynn translated. He wants to know about Ireland. Her younger brother Min came bounding down next. 21, university student. Skinny kid with glasses and a Manchester United shirt on. His English was better than Lynn's. You are from Dublin? He said, shaking my hand enthusiastically. You know Roy Keane? I laughed. I know of him, yeah. Not personally, like. We sat down to lunch at a low table in the main room. Mother had made us spread spring rolls, grilled pork, rice, vegetables I couldn't name, fish sauce for dipping. More food than 5 people could possibly eat. They kept piling food onto my plate, insisting I try everything, asking if I liked it. Very good, I kept saying. Really lovely. And it was. Better than anything I'd had in restaurants. There was something about eating home-cooked food in someone's actual home after weeks of eating alone that hit me harder than I expected. I hadn't sat at a family table since Siobhan died, hadn't been fussed over, hadn't had someone refilling my plate, hadn't been part of that easy rhythm of a family meal. Min asked about the Dublin Fire Brigade, wanted to know everything. What was it like running into fires? Was I scared? What was the worst call I'd been on? His parents listened through Lynn's translation, nodding, looking impressed. Her father said something, and Lynn translated. My father say you are a very brave man. He respect firefighters very much. I felt myself sit a bit straighter. It had been years since anyone had asked about the job with genuine interest, not just polite questions. These people didn't know me as poor Declan. They knew me as Declan who'd saved lives, Declan who'd done something that mattered. After lunch, we had tea. Mother brought out this sweet cake she'd made, kept pushing more onto my plate even though I was stuffed. Father shared some rice wine with me, toasting to friendship, to Ireland, to Vietnam. Min showed me photos on his phone of his university, his friends, asked about Dublin sites he'd seen online. 3 hours passed like nothing. When I finally said I should probably head off, they all protested. Too early, stay longer, have more tea. But I could tell they had their evening ahead of them, and I didn't want to overstay. Lynn walked me to the door. Thank you for coming, she said. My family like you very much. I like them too, I said. Thank you for inviting me. Your mother's an incredible cook. You come again next Sunday? She asked. My mother already asked me to invite you. Yeah, I said. I'd love that. Walking back through the old quarter toward the main road to catch a grab, I felt something I hadn't felt in 3 years. Lightness. Like I'd been given a small piece of something I thought I'd lost forever. Not family, exactly, but the shape of it, the warmth of it, being welcome somewhere. I started going every Sunday after that. It became my anchor point for the week. Sunday lunch with Lynn's family. They'd always make a fuss, always cook too much, always seemed genuinely happy I was there. I'd bring small things, fruit from the market, sometimes sweets for Min, once a nice tea set for Mother that Lynn helped me pick out. During the week, Lynn and I spent more time together. She'd take me to temples I wouldn't have found on my own, markets where she'd translate, help me bargain, laugh at my attempts at Vietnamese. We'd walk along the lake in the evening, get balmy from her favorite cart, sit on those tiny plastic stools drinking Bai Ahoy. I was careful not to misread anything. She was 28, I was 67. Nearly 40 years between us. She'd never given any indication she saw me as anything other than a friend, and I wasn't going to be that creepy old Western bloke who mistakes basic kindness for romantic interest. But I'd be lying if I said the companionship didn't feel significant. After 2 years of crushing loneliness, having someone to spend time with, someone who seemed to enjoy my company, it meant everything. 8 weeks into the Sunday dinners, something shifted. We were finishing lunch, Mother clearing plates, when Lynn went quiet. Her parents were talking in Vietnamese, their tone serious. Min looked uncomfortable. I sat there not understanding, feeling the tension without knowing the source. Finally, Lynn turned to me. Declan, I need to tell you something. What's wrong? I asked. She hesitated, choosing her words. My mother needs small operation. For her stomach, doctors say is not too serious, but must do soon. Right, I said. I'm sorry to hear that. Is she going to be okay? Yes, she will be okay, Lynn said. But the operation costs money. We try to save, but it is difficult. She named the figure, 15 million dong. I did the quick conversion in my head, about 550 euro. I watched her mother across the table, this woman who'd cooked for me every Sunday for 2 months, who'd welcomed me into her home like I was worth welcoming. She looked worried. I didn't even think about it. I'll cover it, I said. Lynn's eyes widened. Declan, no, we cannot ask you. You're not asking, I said. I'm offering. Sure, look it, I've got savings sitting in a Dublin bank doing nothing. Let me help. The reaction was immediate. Mother started crying, came around the table to grip my hands, saying things in Vietnamese I didn't understand but could feel. Father stood up, shook my hand with both of his, looking me in the eye with what seemed like genuine gratitude. Min looked amazed. Lynn hugged me, properly hugged me, and whispered thank you into my shoulder. You're so kind, she said, pulling back. Like family to us. I transferred the money that week. Mother's operation went fine. She recovered well. The next Sunday dinner, she made all my favorite dishes, kept refilling my plate, thanking me over and over through Lynn's translation. Father raised his glass, toasted to my health, my kindness, my generous heart. Sitting there at that table, surrounded by people who seemed genuinely grateful, genuinely fond of me, I felt something I hadn't felt since Siobhan died. I felt needed. Looking back now, I can see that's when the trap closed. Not that they said it deliberately, or maybe they did, I'll never really know. But that feeling, that intoxication of being useful again, of being the hero who could solve problems, it made me blind to everything else. €550. That's what it cost to make me believe I'd found a family again. I had no idea what I'd actually bought myself into. The Sunday dinners became the center of my life in Hanoi. I'd wake up every Sunday morning already looking forward to it. What mother would cook this week? Whether father would share more of his rice wine? What stories Min would want to hear about Dublin? It sounds pathetic when I say it out loud, but that's what happens when you've been lonely long enough. You'll build your whole week around a few hours of borrowed family. Lynn and I were spending more time together outside of Sundays, too. She'd text me during the week, ask if I wanted to go to a temple she thought I'd like, or try a restaurant her cousin recommended. We'd walk through the markets in the old quarter, her translating the vendors' calls, me pretending to understand the bargaining process. She'd hold my arm sometimes when we crossed streets, navigating through the flood of motorbikes, and I'd tell myself it was just practical, nothing more. There was never a kiss, never even a moment where it felt like one might happen. I kept telling myself I was content with companionship, that I wasn't that deluded old bloke who thought a young woman actually fancied him. But the truth is, I was starting to imagine what it might be like if there was more. If this could become something permanent. Not romance, exactly, but partnership. Someone to share life with again. 3 months in, another Sunday dinner. We'd just finished eating. Mother had made this incredible grilled fish, the whole table covered in dishes when Min went quiet. He looked at his parents, then at Lynn, like he was waiting for someone else to speak first. Lynn cleared her throat. Declan, Min have some difficulty at university. I looked at the kid. What's wrong? I asked. Min's English was good enough that he could explain himself. The fees for my semester, he said, looking embarrassed. My scholarship only cover part 1, need to pay the rest by next week, or I cannot continue. How much? I asked. He named it in dong. I did the conversion, €1,200, a semester's fees. Not nothing, but not crippling either. I thought about it for maybe 30 seconds. This was a smart kid, studying engineering, wanted to make something of himself. Education mattered. If Siobhan and I had been blessed with a son, I'd have wanted someone to help him if he needed it. I can cover that, I said. Education's too important to let money get in the way. The reaction was similar to when I'd pay for Mother's operation, but bigger. Min looked like he might cry. Father stood up, clasped my shoulder, said something in Vietnamese that sounded deeply grateful. Mother brought out more food, insisting I eat more, thanking me profusely. Lynn squeezed my hand across the table. You are so kind, she said. Those exact words. Like family to us. I transferred the money the next day. Min sent me a long text, thanking me, promising he'd work hard, make me proud. I told him I was already proud, that I was happy to help. And I meant it. Felt good, actually. Felt like I was investing in something that mattered. Month 4, Father's motorbike broke down. He needed it for work. He was still doing construction jobs, riding out to sites around Hanoi. Lynn mentioned it almost casually one afternoon when we were having coffee. My father very worried, she said. The repair expensive, and he cannot work without the motorbike. I didn't even wait for her to finish. How much for the repair? She looked uncomfortable. Declan, you already helped so much. How much, Lynn? About 9 million dong, she said quietly. Maybe €400. I'll sort it, I said. Tell him to get it fixed and send me the bill. She looked relieved and guilty at the same time. You are too kind to us. You'd do the same if it was your family, I said. At the next Sunday dinner, Father's motorbike was parked out front, running perfectly. He shook my hand so many times I lost count. Through Lynn's translation, he said I was part of the family now, that he thought of me as a brother, that he'd never forget my kindness. I felt 10 feet tall leaving that house. Month 5, Lynn dropped the news that the pharmacy was cutting hours. Restructuring, she said. They were reducing staff shifts across the board. She'd gone from 35 hours a week to 20, which meant her pay was nearly halved. We were sitting at our usual cafe when she told me. She looked genuinely stressed about it. I don't know how I pay my rent this month, she said. Maybe I need to find a second job. What's your rent? I asked. 6 million dong, she said. About €300. I'll cover it, I said immediately. Just this month, till you sort something else out. She protested, but not very hard. I insisted, transferred the money that afternoon. Looking back now, I should have noticed the pattern. Every request came with just enough detail to seem legitimate, just enough stress to seem genuine, and just enough gratitude afterwards to make me feel like a hero. But I wasn't looking at patterns. I was looking at individual problems that I had the power to solve. The family's warmth toward me intensified with each payment. Mother started cooking specific dishes she knew I loved. Father would save me the best seat at the table, pour me the first glass of rice wine. Min would show me his university work, ask for advice on English assignments. Lynn was more affectionate, nothing romantic, but she'd link her arm through mine when we walked, rest her hand on my shoulder when she laughed at my stories. I was spending 2,000 to 3,000 euro a month beyond my normal living costs. My pension was 2,000, so I was dipping into savings to cover it, but I told myself it was fine. I had 95,000 to start with. I was investing in relationships, building something real. The warning signs were there if I'd wanted to see them. Lynn was less available between payments. She'd go quiet for a few days, then reappear right when the next request was coming. The family's requests were becoming regular, almost scheduled. But I explained it all away. This is what family does. You help when people need help. Back in Dublin, I'd have done the same for Siobhan's sister, her cousins, anyone who mattered. And they did matter to me. That was the thing. Whether it was real or not on their end, it felt real to me. Sunday dinners gave me something to look forward to. Spending time with Lynn made me feel less alone. Being useful again, being the person who could solve problems, it gave me back a piece of my identity. I thought I'd lost when I retired and Siobhan died. I'd been in Hanoi almost 5 months when I invited Min out for a beer. Just the two of us, no family, no translation through Lynn. I wanted to get to know him better, man to man. We went to a Biahoy place near his university, sat on the tiny plastic chairs, drank the cheap draft beer that cost about 50 cents a glass. He asked about firefighting techniques, how we'd coordinate on big calls, whether I'd ever been scared. I told him stories I hadn't thought about in years. Then he asked about Lynn. My sister very happy you are here, he said. She say you are a good friend to our family. I'm happy to be here too, I said. You're all very welcoming. He went quiet for a moment, drinking his beer. Then he said something that should have made me think. Before you come, my sister very stressed, he said. Always worrying about money, about family. Now she more relaxed. You help very much. I'm glad I can help, I said. But I should have heard what he was actually saying. Before you come. Before the Western pensioner showed up with his savings and his pension and his desperate need to feel needed. Before they had someone to rely on. I didn't hear it. I just felt proud that I'd made a difference. The phrase Lynn used became regular. You are so kind, like family to us. She'd say it after I paid for something, after I agreed to help, after I spent time with them. Like family. Those 2 words became my anchor, my proof that this wasn't exploitation, it was connection. I'd calculated it one night in my apartment, 5 months in Hanoi. Mother's operation, Min's university fees, father's motorbike, Lynn's rent, plus the smaller things fruit I'd bring, meals I'd pay for, the tea set, incidental costs. I'd given them about 14,000 euro total. My savings were down from 95,000 to 81,000. I told myself it was an investment. The relationships cost money. That building a life somewhere new required generosity. That this was still cheaper than sitting alone in Dublin drinking myself to death in the house full of Siobhan's ghost. What I didn't tell myself, what I couldn't afford to admit, was that I was buying something I should have been given freely. That the warmth I felt every Sunday was conditional on the euros I transferred each month. That family isn't supposed to come with a price tag. But I'd been so desperate to feel needed again, to matter to someone, that I'd convinced myself the transaction was actually love. And they let me believe it. Whether that makes them villains or just pragmatists, I still don't know. 6 months in Hanoi. I sat in my apartment one night doing the math properly for the first time. Mother's operation, Min's fees, father's motorbike, Lynn's rent, plus all the dinners I'd paid for, the gifts, the incidentals. 18,000 euro. Nearly a fifth of what I'd come here with. My savings account showed 77,000. Still plenty, I told myself. My pension kept coming every month. I wasn't in trouble. I was just being generous to people who'd welcome me when I had nowhere else to belong. But somewhere in my gut, I knew I was lying to myself. I'd been integrated into their family rhythm completely by then. Attended a cousin's wedding where I was introduced to everyone as Lynn's friend from Ireland, the kind firefighter who'd helped the family so much. Spent a Saturday helping them paint the house. Father and I working side by side while Mother made lunch. Taught Min English idioms for his exams. Listened to him practice his presentations. It felt real. That's what I keep coming back to. Whether or not it was real for them, it felt real for me. I started imagining a future, not going back to Dublin. Maybe extending my visa, finding a longer-term apartment, something more permanent than the Tejo rental, and if I was being honest with myself, I was imagining that future with Lynn in it. Not as some fantasy where a 67-year-old man ends up with a 28-year-old woman. I wasn't that deluded, but as partners, maybe. Companions. We got on well. She seemed to enjoy my company. We'd built something over these months, hadn't we? One Sunday after dinner, I asked if she wanted to take a walk, just the two of us. We went down to the lake, same route we'd walked dozens of times, sat on a bench watching the evening crowd, couples on motorbikes, families out for ice cream, old men playing Chinese chess. I'd rehearsed this conversation in my head for days, wanted to get it right. Lynn, I said, I've been thinking about my situation here, about what comes next. She looked at me, waiting. I really enjoy spending time with you, I said. With your family. You've made me feel welcome in a way I didn't think I'd ever feel again. You are a very good friend, she said. We all very happy you're here. I took a breath. That's what I wanted to talk about, I said. I'm thinking maybe I don't go back to Dublin. Maybe I get a proper apartment here, something long-term. And I was wondering if you'd ever thought about, I mean, I know there's an age gap. I'm not stupid, but maybe we could find a place together. As companions, if nothing else. The silence that followed felt like falling. She looked uncomfortable. Shifted on the bench, looked out at the lake instead of at me. Declan, she said carefully, we need to talk about this later, okay? I need to help my mother now. She is calling me. Her mother wasn't calling her. We both knew that. But she stood up anyway, and I let her go because I didn't know what else to do. We talk later, she said again, already walking away. I sat on that bench for another hour, stomach knotted, knowing something had shifted but not wanting to acknowledge what. The next week, Lynn was distant. Our morning coffees stopped. She texted saying she had to start work earlier, couldn't make it. When I suggested meeting for lunch one day, she said she was busy. Her responses to my messages got shorter, took longer to arrive. I told myself she was just stressed, thinking about what I'd said, processing it. But I knew, somewhere deep down, I knew. Sunday dinner came. I almost didn't go, but I couldn't stand the thought of sitting in my apartment alone, so I showed up with the usual fruit from the market, tried to act normal. The family was warm, as always. Mother hugged me. Father poured the rice wine. Min asked about a Dublin landmark he'd seen on Instagram. But Lynn was quiet, distracted, kept checking her phone. Halfway through the meal, Min said something in Vietnamese to Lynn. She shot him a look, sharp, like he'd said something wrong. But he'd already said it, whatever it was, and now he looked uncomfortable. He switched to English, trying to smooth it over. My sister very tired this week, he said to me, making conversation. Her boyfriend working in Haiphong, so she worry about him. The word landed like a brick through a window. Boyfriend? I said. Min's face went pale. He looked at Lynn, then at his parents, realizing he'd made a mistake. Lynn stood up abruptly. I need to check on dessert, she said, and disappeared into the kitchen. The rest of the meal was excruciating. Mother kept serving me food, oblivious or pretending to be. Father asked about Irish weather. Min wouldn't meet my eyes. I sat there pushing rice around my plate, feeling my world rearrange itself into something I didn't recognize. I left early, made some excuse about not feeling well. Walked back through the old quarter in a daze, the evening heat pressing down, motorbikes streaming past, feeling like the city was closing in on me. Back in my apartment, I sat on the bed and tried to process it. Boyfriend. She had a boyfriend. Had one this whole time, presumably. While we were having coffee every morning, while she was holding my arm through the markets, while I was helping her family, paying her rent, imagining a future where we'd build something together. And she'd never mentioned him, not once, not in 6 months. I felt sick. Not angry yet, just sick. I tried to tell myself, maybe it was new. Maybe it had just started. Maybe that's why she'd been distant after I'd asked about getting a place together, because she was trying to figure out how to tell me. But I knew that was bollocks. Min had said the boyfriend worked in Haiphong, said it casually, like it was common knowledge, like everyone knew except me. I didn't sleep that night. Lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the air conditioning rattling, replaying every interaction with Lynn through this new lens. Every time she'd said we were friends. Every time she'd called me kind, like family. Every time she'd held my arm, and I'd thought maybe, just maybe, it could be something more. She'd never lied to me, I realized. She'd just never corrected my assumptions. Let me believe what I wanted to believe, because it was useful to her family, to have a lonely Irish pensioner who'd pay for anything if it meant feeling needed. The humiliation hit me in waves. Not just that I'd misread everything, but that I'd been so desperate, so pathetically desperate, that I'd convinced myself a 28-year-old woman might actually want a life with a 67-year-old widower she'd met in a coffee shop. Christ, I'd been such a fool. I texted Lynn the next morning. Can we meet for coffee, our usual place? She didn't respond for 3 hours. When she finally did, it was just, okay, 2 p.m. I got there early. Sat at our table, the same one where we'd met 6 months ago, ordered café soda even though my stomach was in knots. Watched the lake through the window, tried to figure out what I was going to say. She arrived 10 minutes late, looked tired, sat down across from me without ordering anything. Hi, she said. Hi, I said back. Thanks for coming, she nodded, waiting. I took a breath. Lynn, I need to ask you something directly. Is there someone else? A boyfriend? She looked down at the table, didn't deny it, just sat there quiet for a long moment. Yes, she finally said. His name is Tuan. He work in Haiphong. We are together 2 years. 2 years. The words hit like a punch. Why didn't you ever mention him? I asked. She looked uncomfortable. You never ask if I have boyfriend. That's not. I stopped myself. Started again. Lynn, what have we been doing these past 6 months? What was all this? She looked genuinely confused by the question. We are friends, she said. You help my family. We like you very much. Friends, I repeated. Right. She leaned forward slightly. You are very kind man, Declan. My family very grateful for your help. I felt something breaking inside me. Did you ever see this as anything more than that? I asked. Did you ever think maybe we were building towards something? She looked embarrassed now. Shifted in her seat. Declan, you are a kind man. Like uncle. Family like you very much. Uncle. That one word. That's what did it. Not boyfriend, or friends, or grateful. Uncle. I sat back in my chair, felt the full weight of it settling on me. 6 months of Sunday dinners. 6 months of walks through markets, coffee mornings, evenings by the lake. 6 months of feeling like maybe I'd found something to replace what I'd lost with Siobhan. And to them, to her, I was Uncle Declan, the useful Western retiree with money to spare. Looking back now, I can see it so clearly. Every signal I'd misread, every time she'd called me family, I'd heard affection. But what she'd meant was transaction. You're useful to us. You solve our problems, stay useful, and we'll keep welcoming you. The warmth at Sunday dinner wasn't love. It was return on investment. Lynn was still talking. I understand you are upset, she was saying, but you help my family so much. We don't want you to be sad. I almost laughed. Don't want me to be sad. Like that was the issue. Did you plan this? I asked. From the start, was this deliberate? She looked hurt. No plan, she said. You are kind, you want to help, we need help. Is natural, I said. Right. You want to stop helping family? She asked. Her exact words. Like that was the real question. Like my hurt feelings were beside the point, but losing the money supply that mattered. That's when I understood. She didn't even get it. didn't understand why I was hurt. In her mind, we'd had a perfectly reasonable arrangement. She'd provided companionship, her family had provided warmth and welcome, I'd provided money. Everyone got what they needed. She just hadn't realized I thought I was getting something different. I wasn't scammed, not in the traditional sense. Nobody had lied to me outright. They just let me believe what I wanted to believe because it benefited them. And I'd wanted so desperately to believe it that I'd ignored every warning sign. The real con was the one I'd run on myself. "I need to go," I said, standing up. "Declan, wait." I didn't wait. Walked out of the cafe, out into the heat and noise of Hanoi. The motorbikes streaming past, street vendors calling out, the whole city moving around me like I didn't exist. Which, I suppose, to them, I never really had. Not as Declan. Just as the wallet he carried. Over the next few days, my phone kept buzzing. Texts from Lynn, from her mother through Lynn's translation. From Min. All asking if I was okay, if something was wrong, when was I coming to Sunday dinner. They genuinely seemed confused about why I'd gone quiet. I didn't respond to any of them. Just sat in my apartment running the numbers. 18,000 euro, 6 months. 77,000 left in savings. I could keep going, drain it all helping them, or I could stop now and salvage what remained. The math was simple. The emotional accounting was harder. Because here's the thing, I'd felt something real in that house. Whether it was real for them or not, it had been real for me. The first time in 3 years I'd felt like I belonged somewhere. The first time since Siobhan died that I'd felt needed, useful, like my presence mattered to someone. Turns out, you can buy that feeling. For 18,000 euro, you can buy 6 months of feeling like family. The price per Sunday dinner, per walk through the market, per moment of warmth, it all averaged out to a cost I could afford. What I couldn't afford was the realization that it had been for sale in the first place. A week after the cafe, Mother texted through Lynn. Long message in broken English about how much they missed me, how worried they were. Please come to dinner this Sunday. She would make my favorite dishes. I stared at that text for a long time. Imagine showing up, sitting at that table again, Mother piling food on my plate, Father pouring rice wine. Min asking about Dublin. Lynn smiling at me from across the table, knowing I knew, both of us pretending everything was normal. I could do it. I could go back. Keep paying, keep helping, keep feeling needed. And they'd let me. That was the crushing part. They've absolutely let me keep doing it. Because from their perspective, nothing had changed. I was still Uncle Declan with the pension and the savings, still useful. I deleted the message. 2 days later, I booked a flight back to Dublin. I spent the last 2 weeks in Hanoi in complete isolation. Didn't leave my apartment except to get food. Didn't answer texts. Just sat there processing what had happened, what I'd done to myself. The worst part wasn't the money. 18,000 euro hurts, sure, but I still had 77,000, still had my pension. I wasn't destitute. I'd be fine financially. The worst part was understanding that I'd come to Vietnam running from being poor Declan, the widower everyone pitied, and I'd become something even more pathetic. Uncle Declan, the walking ATM. The lonely old man so desperate for connection, he'd pay thousands of euros for the privilege of feeling needed. I'd come here to escape grief and ended up weaponizing my loneliness against myself. The flight back was the reverse of the one that brought me here. Bangkok, Dubai, Dublin, same route, different man. Or maybe the same man, just more aware of what he was. Landing in Dublin felt surreal. The rain, the cold, the familiar gray. I got a taxi back to Drumcondra, unlocked the door to the house I'd left 6 months earlier. Everything was exactly as I'd left it. Siobhan's chair by the window, her books on the shelves, the teapot, the ghost of her in every room. Except now I had a new ghost too. The ghost of who I'd been in Hanoi. The fool who'd confused hospitality for family, gratitude for love, being useful for being wanted. I didn't tell anyone I was back for the first few days. Just moved through the house like a stranger, trying to figure out how to live in it again. Eventually, Tommy texted. He'd heard through someone at the station that I was home. Fancied a pint at the local? I almost said no. Couldn't face seeing the lads, couldn't face their questions about Vietnam, their careful concern. But sitting alone in the house wasn't working either, so I went. They were all there when I walked in, the usual crowd. I saw the looks, the relief that I was back, the curiosity about where I'd been, but they didn't press. Just made space at the table, got me a pint, started talking about the football. After an hour or so, Tommy and I ended up at the bar getting another round, just the two of us. So, he said, Vietnam then. Yeah, I said. How was it? I thought about lying, about giving him the tourist version, temples and coffee and the chaos of Hanoi. But I was tired of lying, especially to myself. Made a bit of a fool of myself, actually, I said. He waited. Met a woman, I said, her family. Thought maybe I'd found something. Turned out I was just useful to them. Financially useful. Tommy nodded slowly. Ah, right. Spent about 18,000 over 6 months, I said. Helping with this, paying for that. Thought it meant something. Christ, Deck, he said. But then he looked at me properly. You got out though, yeah? You're back? I am. Then you're lucky you got out when you did, he said. Could have been a lot worse. Could have burned through everything. I looked at him. That was exactly what I needed to hear. Not pity. Not I told you so. Just the acknowledgement that yes, I'd been an idiot, but I'd stopped before it destroyed me completely. Yeah, I said. Could have been worse. We brought the pints back to the table. Someone asked where in Vietnam I'd been. I told them about Hanoi, about the coffee culture, the lake, the motorbikes. Made it sound like a nice holiday. They seemed satisfied with that. I didn't go back to the local every week after that. But I went sometimes. And it was easier somehow. The pity was still there in their eyes when they looked at me, but it felt less suffocating. Maybe because I'd proven to myself that there were worse things than being poor Declan, whose wife died. Like being Uncle Declan, the ATM. 6 months on now. I'm still in the house in Drumcondra. Still sleeping in the spare room. Still living with Siobhan's ghost. But I've added some new furniture. Changed a few things. Making it mine again, slowly. The 77,000 is still in the bank. I haven't touched it. My pension covers what I need. I'm thinking maybe I'll use some of it to do the house up properly. Or take a real holiday somewhere. Spain, maybe? Somewhere with other pensioners and package tours, and no chance of mistaking a transaction for a relationship. I don't hate Lynn or her family. That's the strange thing. I don't even think they were particularly evil. They had needs, I had money, and they let me believe the transaction was something else, because that's what I wanted to believe. From their perspective, everyone got what they needed. It was me who confused the deal. The lesson I learned in Christ, it was an expensive one, is this. When you're desperate to feel needed again, you'll mistake being useful for being loved. And some people, they're not scammers exactly, but they're pragmatic. They'll take what you're offering and let you believe whatever story helps you keep offering it. Vietnamese families take care of their own. That's real, that's true. But if you're paying, they'll let you believe you're one of them until the money stops. Or until you wake up. The hole Siobhan left couldn't be filled in Hanoi. I know that now. I just dug a new one next to it. Cost me 18,000 euro and 6 months of my life to learn it. But at least I learned it before I lost everything. At least I came home. Declan's story isn't unique. Across Vietnam, there are men like him grieving, lonely, searching for connection in a place far from home. Some lose more than Declan did. Some lose everything. The details change, but the pattern is familiar. A man running from pain, finding welcome, mistaking financial leverage for genuine affection, and learning too late that warmth you have to buy isn't the same as love freely given. Declan got out with most of his savings intact. He got out with hard-won wisdom about the difference between being useful and being loved, about how loneliness makes us vulnerable in ways we don't recognize until we're already deep into the transaction. His story serves as a reminder that grief is a currency of its own. When we're desperate enough, we'll spend anything to feel human again. Money, dignity, self-awareness. The people who recognize that desperation aren't always villains. Sometimes they're just practical. But that doesn't make the exchange any less costly. If you've got a story like Declan's, or if you're living in Vietnam navigating these same complicated waters, share it. Sometimes the best protection against expensive mistakes is hearing about someone else's first. This is Inside Vietnam. Stay careful out there.